Running a nonprofit can feel extremely overwhelming, especially if you don't come from a business background. Most nonprofit leaders started out with a passion for the organization and its mission, not with the business and finance background to help them run the back end. So this video is to help you understand how applying business principles to your nonprofit organization can help you to increase your mission and your impact. Because I have been in the trenches and ran a nonprofit, as well as being in accounting for 40 years now, I can help you with those principles and help you get the back end and financial foundation in place so that you can make the most impact with your organization's mission. So today we're going to do 5 points or principles that are business principles that can be applied to your nonprofit organization in a way to help you. The first one we're going to touch on today is diversifying your revenue streams and looking at your financial management. This is so important, particularly today for U.S. nonprofits as they're facing potential federal grant reductions or shutdowns. So it's a scary time to be a nonprofit, quite honestly. And I feel your pain in this, and I want to help you with other ways to raise funds that are not grant dependent. One way to increase your revenues from a local perspective is to reach out to your local chambers of commerce, to your local commissioners, to your community foundations, and to corporate partnerships. Those are all ways to get funds in the door that do not rely on grants, but rely on the goodwill you have in your community. And I highly recommend you make those connections and those partnerships. Another way you can raise funds is fees for services. If you do something, for instance, if you provide therapy and you have some clients that you provide it for free or reduced cost, but if you can provide it at a more of a for-profit business rate to others in your community, that's not unallowed. You may have to pay tax on it as unrelated business income, but it's allowed. So that's another way, to have fees for service. A third way is to get your individual donor base pumped up. Really use social media to get your message out there and be consistent with your posting. You want to be top of mind for people to know what you're about and know what your needs are so that they can come alongside you, feel your passion, and help you to raise funds. I have a good example of a nonprofit that I ran, the community center that I ran for about 10 years as the board chair. We ran into a situation back in 2016 where we had a satellite senior center on site, and we were paid rent, basically, to run the program, and we had some grants that helped fund the program. The attendees had been dropping off, and we got to the point where they were going to have to shut the center down because there wasn't enough attendance to keep it going. So we found this out a few months before it happened, but this was a drastic revenue reduction for this nonprofit, and we had to quickly pivot and say, what can we do to get money in the door to bridge the gap where we're losing this revenue? So what we started doing, the community center had rentals, 3 buildings that it rented out. So we really began to market the rentals and get people in and showcase what we had to offer. So we were able to, after several years, 10 times our rental revenue to bridge that gap. And we also leaned in on our annual fundraiser, which is a road biking event, and we're able to 3 times our revenue from that with both individual entry fees as well as tourism grants that came alongside us to help us get the people in to do the cycling event. So those are some strategic ways you can look at getting revenues in the door without being too grant dependent. So back to the community center nonprofit that I was running in the 2012 through 2023 timeframe. So I told you that in 2016, the satellite senior center had to shut down and we had to get some additional rental revenues in and some annual fundraising revenues in. Well, what happened in 2020? COVID hit. And what did we do as an organization? We rented out space for parties and reunions and all those things that we could no longer do because of COVID. So here we are again with a revenue shortfall. In fact, our executive director went for several months without pay. We did avail ourselves of the payroll protection program loans, and she did get some pay through that. But it was a very tough time. We actually had to go into debt to just keep the lights on during that period of time. So I've been there too. I've been there in the tough times. And I can tell you that what saved us during that time is our relationship with a local community foundation who knew what we were doing and knew what we were about and was able to grant us a 2-year capacity building grant that allowed us to pay off our debt, allowed us to get our executive director salary up to comparable salaries and hours of other organizations. And that's what saved us after COVID. So again, those relationships are so key to getting your financial foundation and getting those funds in that you need to operate. Implementing robust financial tracking and systems for the financials of the nonprofit organization are key to managing your organization. So talking about financial management, recently a client came to me who had a need to move from a cash basis to an accrual basis of accounting throughout the year instead of just at year-end for audit purposes. They didn't really have the financial personnel on staff to make that leap, and their audit had a material weakness statement, which is something that raises the eyebrows of a stakeholder or funder looking at the organization for potential grant or funding. So if you have that situation where you might need to get an outside consultant to come in and help you get your financials in better order for stakeholders, that's something I would encourage you to reach out for help. Sometimes you just don't have enough staff and you can't afford to hire the staff to do it in-house, but there are resources available to help. So that's a big deal when funders are looking at your audit. They don't want to see anything that might raise an eyebrow as to how well you are managing the organization. So that's an example of needing good financial reporting. With the same organization, we were able to put in another financial platform called Fathom, and that takes the financials from QuickBooks Online and feeds them into a program that calculates key ratios, performance indicators, and tells you how you're doing compared to your targets and your budget. And it's just great information to look at, mostly the trend line. You want to see positive trends, not necessarily at a point in time, but you want to see how you're trending with your financials. So that's another platform that I highly recommend, but you need something to track, to properly manage. I highly recommend accrual accounting and not cash. You need to have your systems in place so that when you do have your audit, it's easy and it's an audit that funders can look to and have assurance in. So the second major business principle we're going to discuss is adaptability and data-driven decision-making. This is so important as you manage your organization. Things change, right? COVID happened. Federal grants are being decreased and possibly shut down. You have to be able to pivot and take the necessary action, sometimes in a quick manner, to get to the next step, to find your new funders, to find your new partners. So if you have systems in place, like a QuickBooks Online, like a Fathom platform that's looking at your key performance indicators, you're going to see where your gaps are. As an example, going back to the nonprofit community center, when we found out that we were going to have to close our senior center, we found out the impact of that by looking at our financials. How much were we actually going to lose, bottom line? How much did we have to replace to keep the organization sustainable? Looking at the large nonprofit, they had a profit center that they thought was a profit center, but when we got deep into the books, we realized it was a loser or barely breaking even, and it was a lot of work. So if you don't have that detailed reporting, looking at each of your programs or projects, and not just looking at the total picture, you don't know where to cut, you don't know where to make changes to help the organization move forward. So along with data-driven reporting, it's so important with a nonprofit to tell your story. And using data-driven storytelling is key. In the organization I've been closest to, the executive director is an amazing speaker and writer, and she could weave stories of the organization's rentals or parties they were having or special needs populations that they were helping, and put her passion into it in a way that would make others want to come alongside and be a part of what we were doing there. So Data is not only boring reports and spreadsheets. Data is also telling your story and helping you to get it out there so others can help you to increase your mission. So with your organization and you as a nonprofit leader, what stories did the data tell you that you could share? How can you frame what you're doing in a way that would make people that read your story want to get involved? For me, it has been the nature park at the community center that I was a part of. That was exciting to me. And when I talked to people about it, they could hear the passion. But I also had numbers. I could tell them how many people were playing disc golf and how many people were coming to hike and bike on the nature trail. So it gave it validity, but it also showed the mission and the passion. So you can bring both. You can bring the data and you can bring the passion. When you combine them, that's when people want to get involved. The third business principle that we want to apply to our nonprofit organization is a vital one, and that is to have strong governance, accountability, and ethics in your organization. I cannot stress enough how important it is to start out like you want to continue. You want to be sure you have all the foundation in place to make a good start so that you can build on that throughout the life of the organization. That means at the outset, you need to get people on your board that are honest, that are trustworthy, that have the mission's impact in mind, but also have the integrity to carry out the mission in a way that's legal and ethical. You have to make sure you go to your local, state, and federal laws and regulations and make sure you cover all of those bases. And that's not something you inherently know. Most nonprofit leaders are not business people. They're not accountants. They're not attorneys. They have a passion for the organization, but the business end of it is difficult. So I highly suggest that you do reach out to someone to help you, like an accountant, like an attorney that specializes in nonprofit organizations, to help you get all those pieces in place. Make sure you're compliant from the start. You can get shut down more quickly from missing something from a compliance aspect than anything. So be sure you start the way you want to continue. Be sure the tone at the top is one of high integrity and ethics. And that will get your mission started off in the right way and in a way that will make others have trust in your organization and want to help you. So in running your nonprofit organization, you want to make sure that you have the tools in place to tell others about what you're doing and telling your story both in data and outcomes in ways that make others want to come alongside you. So one way you can do that is having an annual audit. You may not be required to have an audit based on your revenues or based on the grants you receive. But if you do have an audit, a lot of times brings that confidence from funders and government agencies that you have your books in order. They can put trust in what you say, and it can be helpful. Even though it's expensive, sometimes having an audit, even when not required, might be a benefit to you. One other thing I wanted to stress about my personal journey is when I was leading the board as the board chair of a nonprofit organization, I obviously could have prepared the 990 every year for that organization. However, I chose not to. And here's why. It gave more credibility for an outside CPA firm to prepare that 990 and have that outside third-party credibility than for me as the board chair to complete the Form 990. So that's a recommendation I have for small nonprofits that might have someone on the board that could do the 990. If you outsource it, that could potentially provide more credibility to your organization. So your organization has some tools that can help you to build credibility with your stakeholders. One of those is an annual audit. Another one is your Form 990. And let me go into a little more detail about both of those. As a nonprofit, your numbers and your outcomes and everything about you is open to the public. You want to make sure that that transparency that you have is used to your best advantage. And there's a couple of tools that will help you do that you might not be thinking about. One of those is your Form 990. That is public information. It's on the IRS website and it's on guidestar.org, which is a nonprofit platform. And folks can look at that at any time and see your mission, your numbers, your outcomes. This is a great place to showcase what you're doing in a way that you have to do it anyway. It's required. So why not use it to your best advantage? Really pump up your 990, really make it tell your story. Another place I highly encourage you to get engaged with is guidestar.org. This is a place that you can put lots of information. You can put your board members, you can put your mission, you can put your programs. I highly, highly encourage you to put as much information in there as possible, because that's one of the first places that funders are going to look to see what you're doing and if they feel like you're a worthy organization to support. So in any business, you have to have a succession plan. And this is also true for nonprofit organizations. What if your executive director had to suddenly leave her post? Do you have a backfile position? You have to make sure that you have those key employee roles and those key volunteer roles covered in the event that someone can't do something at the drop of a hat. For board members, and when you start your board, you're going to have term limits. Generally, it's a good idea. You should have term limits. You shouldn't have board members that are on forever. And you want to rotate those term limits at the beginning so everybody doesn't rotate off in 3 years and you have all brand new board. It's very important for the sustainability and the continuity of the organization to have people that know what happened in the past and can lead into the future and keep that rotating. Another thing about board members, you always want to be looking for people that might fit your board. We had someone that used to come to the community center and play disc golf and pickleball, and he was in his 20s, and he was real interested and there every day playing one of those. And one day I talked to him and I said, "Hey, would you consider coming on our board?" Most of our board members were between 50 and 65 years old. We didn't have any youthful board members. And he agreed and has been an outstanding board member. In fact, he's over all the outdoor recreational part of the organization. So make sure you're incorporating board members that have different types of abilities and skills and demographics, age, race. You want to bring all different types of people in so that you can be inclusive with your organization. The fourth business principle that we want to make sure we incorporate into our nonprofit organization is investing in people. People are the lifeblood of your organization. In most cases, your mission is to help people. Sometimes it's to help animals, but people are still doing the work. People are still driving the organization. People are the ones that are going to have the passion for it. So you need to take care of those people, both your staff and your volunteers. And there are low-cost and no-cost ways to take care of your staff. For instance, you can offer pre-tax benefits to them. That doesn't cost you anything out of pocket, but you could give them health benefits on a pre-tax basis that will give them money back in their pocket. You can offer time off, paid time off. You can offer flex time, something that if an executive director needs to work part-time and certain hours, you can work with people in that way. For your volunteers, you can have appreciation events. You can send handwritten thank you notes. You want to be sure to keep your volunteers happy so that they want to keep giving back. So talking about people and communication, you want to be sure that when you're out in the public eye, that you are putting your best face forward and your missions forward in a way that makes you attractive and known for something. A story I've shared before is in my community, I was known as the Farmington girl because every event I went to, I would try to talk to people about Farmington and what we were doing and how they could potentially be involved. And some people would probably run away because they saw me coming. But it was because I had the passion to bring that organization front of mind to people. I wanted people to know about it. I wanted people to feel what I felt about it. And I wanted to share. So putting your organization out there and putting your best face forward is important wherever you are. Sometimes you have to kind of live your organization. So speaking of engaging stakeholders and volunteers, I have a great story about that. We had a disc golf player who was very interested in the course, so much so that when he had some money he needed to donate to get a charitable deduction, he came to us. He asked us if he could build a second disc golf course on our 60-acre nature park. And this happened just in 2024. Well, now we're in June of 2025, and that second disc golf course opened last month and has been so well received. And it was completely funded by this volunteer and built by this volunteer with some people that he got to help him. So it cost the community center nothing, but it's something that is so attractive to bring people to our facilities. So you just don't know what impact you're making by what you have to offer sometimes. And nice surprises like that really make it worth it to be part of a nonprofit. The fifth business principle, and the last one we're going to talk about, is branding and marketing. Any business needs to market to stay in business, or at least most of them do. And your nonprofit is no different. You need to be out there in front of the public, being seen, being recognized, having your consistent brand in front of people. And social media is the best thing to do that with. It's no cost. You have an audience of untold millions of people. You have a way to post different things that can help you show different areas. This is where that storytelling, the data-driven storytelling, could come into play. You could write an article talking about how you impacted a certain segment of the population. You could write an article about how you're helping rescue animals. You can make that passion show through with photographs, with videos. There's just so many ways that you can brand and market your organization. Another thing I want to stress about that, though, is consistency. You don't want to just go all in and be in social media for a month and then you disappear. You want to stay at the top of mind with your audience. You want to be consistent with your marketing. One great tool that used to be paper but now is more electronic is a newsletter. Send out a monthly newsletter to your list of contacts. Keep it top of mind for them. Make it easy for them to give. Have buttons that say, click here to give. Make it just seamless and easy, because people are on their phone. They're not usually going to be at their laptop. They're going to want an easy way to give if they feel their heartstrings tug to the point that they want to give money. So just be sure that you have the consistent message and you have the branding in place. And personal story on this one, I've told you what brought me into the nonprofit organization that I led was a bike event, a road cycling event. And after I rode in that first one, and that was the first road cycling event I'd ever done. It was the first time I'd ever really ridden my new road bike for any length of time. And I got on the board after that, and I began leading road bike rides. Started like 5:30 in the evening. We'd meet up at the community center, and we'd ride 20, 30, 40 miles, 2 or 3 nights a week. So that really beefed up the cyclists that were invested in the organization and knew about the organization. And it really took off to the point that sometimes we had over 30 people at these weekday rides. And then before we had our annual cycling event, I would start the social media push, and I would begin emailing past participants, and I would really pump it out there on social media to the point sometimes people would say, okay, I'll sign up if you'll just leave me alone, in a good-natured way. So that being said, you just have to be persistent and consistent with your marketing. And I know from experience how that can turn things around to really grow events and to really grow your impact. So in the realm of advertising and marketing, you might think, I'm not qualified to do that. Just like I'm not a business person, I'm not a marketing person. I don't know how to start. So there are people who can help you with that, and it's not that expensive. I work with a video guy that helps me do professional videos. There are marketing agencies that can help you, and a lot of times they're going to give a discount to nonprofits. Of course, you can Google or chat GPT anything and come up with some decent marketing strategies there too. But I just want to encourage you to reach out if you don't feel like you have that background. Start exploring some opportunities. It doesn't ever hurt to get quotes and just see what you can come up with to get your mission out there. So along with your marketing, you want to be sure to share your program impacts to the public. That's what you're about. That's why you're in this mission, to have the positive outcomes that you set out to achieve. When I was on the board of the community center, another board member and I went to a conference called the Southeast Festivals and Events Organization. And we learned a lot about how to get surveys out after a program or an event. You can do it online through SurveyMonkey. When we did that with our bike events, you can do in-person surveys, and you don't have to survey everyone. You survey a few people that attended your fundraiser, for instance, and you find out how they felt about it, and you get their direct quotes, and then you put those into your grant applications, and you put those on your marketing, and you have that personal aspect, not just you saying what's going on in your organization, but others giving you positive feedback, and that means a world of difference to people looking at funding your organization. So I hope you've enjoyed these 5 business principles that can be applied to your nonprofit organization in a way that you can increase your mission and your impact. I've enjoyed bringing these to you. I've used them myself, both in business and nonprofits, and I feel confident that they will help you. And I hope they've given you some food for thought, some ideas, and some strategic ways to move forward with your nonprofit. If you find yourself stuck on any of them, or if you want some additional input, I'd love to talk to you about that. We can set up a free discovery call to talk about your organization and how I might be able to assist. Just click the link below and let's start a conversation. See you on the next one.